Hello chess friends and welcome to another Crazyhouse chess game, where this one we see a game by the Australian national master Igor Bielobruch playing as Bugzilla, where actually he was one of the top 5 Bughouse players in the world about 15 years ago, and now is quite solidly 2600 plus Crazyhouse player, and his peak rank's been a lot higher than that. And let's see him successfully play a line known as the Wolf attack in this game, or perhaps Wolf defense is a better name. It's a name for the system where basically black plays this move of d6 and then follows up after the move knight c3, which is the best move to go for e4. And then playing the move e6 and just building this very solid but quite passive center, where often black's plan is going to be to play knight c6 and e5 and try to hit back in the center without allowing any of these bishop c4 and bishop f7 sack ideas. But in this particular game, rather than playing knight c6, which is a normal move, which is true that rather than allowing this castle e5, the white probably is well advised to play e5, and I have analysed these lines quite a bit in the past. I did find after d5, d5, knight g4, and now the move bishop f4, the white does seem to be quite substantially better, where a key point is that if black does try something like takes, takes, and pawn at g4, which is a line that the lone wolf has had quite good results with against me with, well then one good approach to move like knight at h5, jumping in here. And a computer actually thinks the idea of pawn f6 in order to get a knight at g7 if gf6 will also give a pretty strong attack. Though I do think I like knight at h5 better. It just feels more natural to sort of take and put something on f6 and just have the attack continue from there. But instead of this, well, Igor played a different move, knight g4. Well, you might recognize as a kind of what's it called, fishing pole style attack after castles. Actually, maybe h3 first might have been more precise, because at least I know in the Pyrrhus defense lines with bishop on g7 that are generally not scared of the knight sack. It's not like Bughouse where the opponent can keep getting lots of pieces from their partner. Here the pieces have to come from you taking the opponent's pieces, and white's in a very good position to cover his dark squares moves like bishop e3 and knight at h5 and simply be a piece up here with the attack. So I think that's the simplest refutation of black's play. But instead white castle, black went knight c6. Now after h3, black now played the move h5, going for this fishing pole, and well, in the game, white didn't really sense the danger and sort of allowed the attack to come. Obviously, hg4, while it's not losing by force, it's not really what you want to kind of see in this sort of position. You know, you get a very strong attack down this h-file in theory. I guess after knight h2, you can still defend because his pawn is not so easy to cover. And moves like putting a pawn f3 is a little bit speculative. But still, there's no need to kind of allow this when if white just plays a move like he did bishop f4, or even the move d5, which might be even better again. I mean, still, it's not really clear what the knight is doing on g4 if white develops normally. Well, black played e5, so trying to justify the development of the knight in this way. And after d5, actually, I'm curious to see what move you would play if you were white in this position. How would you deal with the threat to the bishop on f4 in this case? Well, as always, you can pause the video if you want to spend more time thinking about it. The move that white played in the game was the move h takes g4, which is alright, but I think it's not the best move in this position, actually by quite a big margin. I think that actually one move that the engine points out as being really nice is the move bishop c4, just ignoring the threat, which is often a very good idea in Crazyhouse to find a good way to ignore the opponent's threats and make our own. Because after e4, the point is that we can now take. It's important to play bishop f7 first, because if you take the queen first, they can take with a knight and cover f7 that way. But now after making a million mouse slips today, after king f7 and takes, well, we kind of see in a position like this one that, well, white has now got the knight in hand from hg4 to drop a knight on e5 or on g5, put a queen on f7, and basically have a very, very powerful attack, which black is quite hard pressed to defend against in my view. The other approach, which is another one that you often see engines give, is the move pawn at h6, which is basically trying to use a decoy where if black were to take the pawn, well, then we don't have to worry about the attack on the h-file any longer. But if black does play takes the bishop, then we can take and... Well, it's the idea we saw in one of my recent videos where the pawn got to h7 and white was able to queen in this way. Always a good idea to keep in mind in these sort of attacking systems where the opponent is trying to open a file. But if knight h6, white can simply take, and it's quite obvious in a position like this that white has a dominant position in the center. The black has a quite weak king, and the white should be winning with best play. But instead we had hg4. That should be h takes g4. There we go. So then black played e takes f4. I think that h takes g4 would have been kind of interesting, but I guess maybe pawn h6 again could be a little bit annoying, like we saw before. So e4 kind of avoids that problem. And now once again, I think that white probably didn't defend in the best way. I guess true, he's only rated 2-300, but still I think he could have, improved his play quite a bit. Move G takes H5, he play, I think it's kind of giving black what he wants in opening the file with a king. Whereas the idea of bishop c4 and still playing the idea I mentioned of taking and dropping a knight in and a queen. I mean, it's not as effective right now, but it's still a pretty good idea in this position. I'm not quite sure how black should deal with it, because you put a bishop on e6 or a bishop on g8, it's kind of clear that you've sort of lost momentum as black in that case. So I played g takes h5, and then after the move rook h5, I mean, this attack down the h file is quite strong. It's not even just the h file, but just the fact that white's dark square is so weak, and that black can easily drop pawn or a bishop on g3 to exploit that. I mean, at this point, I think white already has to be very direct in his attack in order to get some sort of chance. Maybe knight d5 is required just to get rid of this pawn on f4 at any kind of cost. But even then, I'm not sure if it's necessarily successful. I mean, even a move like putting a bishop on g3 is kind of interesting to sort of sack the bishop, but in return, you, after takes, you're able to threaten to drop pawn f2. And black is probably going to get some of the material back at least. I feel like black should have a pretty good initiative. Maybe white can somehow defend by like just giving back the rook and saying that the rook is not that useful for black in the position. Say pawn h3. But okay, it kind of takes nerve to steal to play moves like this, and still pawn at g4 is, well, still keeping it messy, let's say. In fact, instead of pawn at g3, maybe it's better just to play pawn at g4 and just play it this way with knight f4 and kind of even potentially sack the rook just to get sort of more material in hand, like pawn at h2 is, yeah, very nice idea by the computer that you're going to go for bishop d6 with check, so that your queen can come into the attack with tempo, king h2, bishop d6. I think this is probably going to be winning for black after knight f4, queen h4, because white's just not in time to drop pieces on the board, and black's just doing everything with tempo. So it's not that easy to come up with great advice for white at this point, to be honest. Well, he played pawn at d5, but it didn't really succeed in stopping black's threats, where black's threats are a lot stronger than white's threat to the knight is here. So black played pawn at g3. There are a lot of other ways you can attack the pawn, but this is quite direct. So pawn h3, takes. Not pawn at g3, I mean, white is just getting destroyed on these dark squares. He really needs a dark square bishop to hold, but he doesn't have it here. The game ended rook e2, bishop c5, pawn e3, bishop e3. So black is just playing just to create the material advantage. So takes. I mean, black is threatening to put something on f2 or h2. And that also opens up the possibility to put the rook in at a good moment as well. Obviously, if you put the pawn in some ways, it's better, and it does help support some promotions at some different moments. So d takes c6. Black played pawn f2, and after king h1 and bishop at g4. I mean, it's probably not the absolute fastest way to win, but white nonetheless resigned at this point, where I think the reason is that, well, simply black is up on material, and also he just ready to attack on h3, or even just play bishop takes f3, and then put a rook on h2 for mate. And white just doesn't have a really good defense to either of these ideas. So yeah, that's how Bugzilla managed to win very quickly and very convincingly with the wolf attack. Admittedly, this was a bit more of the fishing pole interpretation, whereas theoretically, certainly the approach with knight c6 and going for e5 is much closer, equally to a much closer game. But okay, Bugzilla played for tricks and he got rewarded with a quick win. So it's always fun to see these tactics, and well, if you enjoyed this video or if you learned something new, then do make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing, especially if you're new to the channel, so you can stay up to date with more of my Grandmaster chess videos. In any case, good luck in your next Crazyhouse games, and I will see you in the next video.